It's a monumental journey for a raindrop that fell on soil in the upper Midwest to travel all the way to the ocean. We're closing that loop and coming to understand how best to ensure the water our rivers are delivering to the world is as pure as possible. In the last episode, we began in Brunswick, Missouri at the end of the Grand River. We met with NRCS staff and our good friend Steve Schnarr, who eloquently likened fresh water to a modern-day gold rush. In this episode, we complete our journey when we step into a boat that takes us to the mouth of the Mississippi River. Out here in the heartland, where agriculture drives rural economy, we are on the path to a future that not only produces food, but also renewable energy, ecological services, and improved wildlife habitats. I'm on a journey to tell the stories of Horizon 2, a climate-smart future for corn, soybean, livestock, and renewable natural gas production. I'm Brandon Butler, and this is Prairie Prophets. We're picking up with part 2 of our journey down the Mississippi River watershed here in Memphis, Tennessee, on Beale Street, one of the most bustling urban areas along the river's course. In this episode, we're going to explore the economic impact the river has on Middle America, as well as some of the history of the river. Then we're going to end just south of Venice, Louisiana, where the mighty Mississippi dumps into the Gulf of Mexico. Long before we had an interstate system and jet airplanes to rocket us around the world, rivers were the major mode of transportation. None more critical to the expansion of our country than the Mississippi. We're headed to Vicksburg to learn how a strategic move along the river helped ensure the future of our nation. Well, we made it to Vicksburg, Mississippi, and we're walking down the street. We see a sign that says cigars, coffee, and duck calls. We had to come in, and we met Brad.
Yes, sir.
What makes this area so special?
There's several things that make it special. To me, it's a melting pot, and it's been that way since the Industrial Revolution. You had Europeans coming up the river looking for places to civilize and set up businesses and industry. And then we're a river town. We're sitting here looking over the Mississippi River and the Yazoo where it meets it. And as a duck hunter, that's just that's special to be able to utilize the river, the Mississippi River, to hunt on.
Yeah, how important is the river to this community?
You know, our city's industry is based on the port. We're building a southern port. We have one north of town. So, you know, for industry, it's greatly important to the area. But, you know, as an outdoorsman, it's the draw. It's the reason I live here. I moved back home to work for a guy across the bridge because I knew that he could see the Mississippi River levee from his kitchen window, and I can now. And so being able to kind of hop on that levee, ride up and down, drop our boats off on the other side and fish and hunt is extremely important for me.
Waterfowl hunting is a passion of many residents of the Mississippi River region, and it's a critical economic stimulus to cities like Tunica, Vicksburg, and Natchez. Waterfowl demand clean water and healthy riparian ecosystems. If we hope for good waterfowl hunting throughout the watershed, we must protect our water. Clearly, Vicksburg is known for the Civil War battle. What do you know about the history of this town?
I do know the Northern Army used the Mississippi River, and Ulysses S. Grant created a canal that basically he was able to shut off supply to the city for the Confederate Army. The river was integral in in the siege of Vicksburg from the Northern Army.
The 47-day siege of Vicksburg eventually gave control of the Mississippi River, a critical supply line for the war, to the Union forces. It was part of Grant's successful Anaconda Plan to cut off all trade to the Confederacy. As we leave behind the history of Vicksburg, we're on our way to meet with a couple of scientists at LSU who are experts in the field of hypoxia.
Tell us a little bit about your role here at LSU and the research you work on.
I'm a professor in the Department of Oceanography and Coastal Sciences. My work has been focused on mostly human-caused influences on habitats. I've also done 38 years now of work on the low oxygen in the Gulf of Mexico.
We're working on an initiative called Horizon 2. It's a Climate Smart Commodities grant in which we're looking to restore cover crops to agriculture fields in Iowa, Missouri, and throughout the heartland, along with establishing prairie strips in those fields and along our riparian waterways. What is the effect of the nutrients that are coming down the Mississippi River from the agriculture lands of the north and ending up in the Gulf of Mexico?
First, I'd like to applaud you for trying to get cover crops over a large portion of the Midwest, because that's going to keep the nutrients, or help keep the nutrients out of the waterways and into the Mississippi River. The main nutrients of concern are nitrogen and phosphorus, which are fertilizers. They stimulate crops, but they also stimulate the growth of single-celled plants in the ocean called phytoplankton. And because the nutrients have gone up over time, the production of phytoplankton has increased. There's a stratified layer, and so the stratification prevents oxygen from getting from the surface to the bottom, and you end up with a deficit.
To sum it up, dead zones occur when oxygen in the water drops below levels necessary to sustain life. This means fish and plants cannot survive, leaving an area void of living organisms, a dead zone. And the one in the Gulf of Mexico is the second largest in the world.
What's being done to alleviate this problem?
The main issue is nitrogen and phosphorus in the watershed. Most of the nitrogen comes from agricultural land.
Up north?
Yeah. Most of the water comes from the upper Mississippi and the Ohio. Most of the sediments come from Missouri, and the sediments adhere phosphorus, and then dissolved nitrogen is in the other part of the watershed. If we could work to keep the nutrients on the land where they're going to benefit the farmers and produce more economic gain for them, that would also help water quality in the Midwest as well as water quality in the Gulf of Mexico.
We have to be better neighbors in the north, where cover crops and restored prairie could make a huge impact on water quality. We now visit with Doug Daigle, and while he may not be a professor, his amount of knowledge around the issue of hypoxia is so great, he could surely write a book on it.
Well, actually, I got involved with the hypoxia issue in 1999. I was working for an NGO and engaged with the process that was pulling together the Hypoxia Task Force and action plan, which included the 12 states, up and down the river. And then since 2005, in that role, I've been affiliated with the Hypoxia Task Force.
So what's the major contributor to hypoxia?
Well, one of the major ones is what we call nutrients, which are the two big ones are nitrogen and phosphorus, and that's what is used in fertilizer, and they're called nutrients because they help things grow. But when they wash into the water, they'll cause algal blooms. You know, that's a plant and it's growing, and they'll use up all the oxygen in the water. Out in the Gulf, you've got the algal blooms and the critters eating it, you know, the plankton, zooplankton. When you're out there in the open Gulf, it happens on a big scale because the load from the river is so huge. You know, it's 95% of the fresh water that's coming into the Gulf. Something similar can happen in ponds and lakes. You know, you have water running in from our inputs, even from sewer systems and things, and it fertilizes the algae, and you know, you'll use up all the oxygen.
Where are most of these nutrients coming from?
So everything that goes in can contribute to it, and does. Proportionally, it's mostly runoff from fields, agricultural, cultivated fields. Just in terms of the scale of the Mississippi River Basin, you have tens of millions of acres under production. So you do have big cities along the river, and they discharge directly into the river. And depending on the city, it's treated more or less, you know, depending on which city system you're talking about. But proportionally, most of it's coming from, you know, the farm fields. And it's not that anybody wants that to happen, it's just the scale, you know, it's cause and effect. That's where most of the runoff is coming from.
Fishing and shrimping, both recreationally and commercially, are vital components of life along the Mississippi and in the Gulf region. To protect this industry and critical food source, we must understand what can be done better.
What's the solution?
Well, there are basically two things you can do. You can reduce the input, try to reduce the nutrients that are getting in. It's sometimes called nutrient loss, because folks are trying to use the nutrients, they're not trying to lose them. So you can do things in the management of agriculture where you undertake practices that reduce the amount that gets washed off, you know, and gets lost that way. The other thing you can do is once it's in the water, in the river or in a tributary, you can try to process it, intercept some of it with wetlands. Once it gets into the Gulf, it's too late to do anything about it there. But
So all of our solutions are nature-based.
they are in a sense, yeah, except that human action is what changes, tries to get it back into balance, because human action has put it out of balance. Yeah.
We're back behind the windshield and closing in on our final destination of Venice, Louisiana. We're about to meet up with Matt Wagaspak, who runs the Vanishing Paradise program for the National Wildlife Federation, along with Ryan Lambert, a longtime fishing outfitter in the area. Captain Lambert has owned and operated Cajun fishing adventures for over 40 years. He's now entered the window of life when giving back to the resource is far more important than taking away. He is a champion of the marsh and is doing more than his share to help leave a legacy for all the anglers and wildlife enthusiasts who, as Theodore Roosevelt said, remain in the womb of time.
We started all the way up in Brunswick, Missouri, and we've made it to the mouth of the Mississippi.
Yep, this is where it all comes. This, you know, the problems start up there, but you know we're complicit in the problem as well, because we built these levees for flood protection and navigation of the Mississippi River, so we don't diversify all the nitrates that come down, the phosphorus that comes down. But when you do, like this project's brand new, this is just another diversion in the river. We cut these crevasses and we slowed the water down to where it could build land like it's supposed to. And these trees are not even 2 years old. Can you imagine? They're not 2 years old. It's thousands and thousands, all natural. We didn't do anything. This place it just grows like it's on some kind of fertilizer.
Yeah, it's like a steroid for the vegetation.
It really is.
So as these nutrients end up down here, collected throughout the entire Mississippi River watershed, it benefits the grasses.
If it can get to it.
But it's a big problem outside of the coastal area.
In years past, because of navigation in the Mississippi River, we've taken everything and put it out of Southwest Pass. Everything just flows right out of the whole flow, just so it can scour the bottom and keep the shipping open. But in doing so, it's made the dead zone, because all that nutrient slug goes into one spot, and what happens, it just goes and makes algae and then dies and gets on the bottom and makes the dead zone. But this year, the dead zone was smaller than recent history.
To hear the dead zone has grown smaller is great news indeed. New practices in agriculture, like no-till drilling, cover crops, and prairie strips are paying off. We have a long ways to go, but progress is in play. And as today's farmers look for more sustainable practices to implement, the future of our grandchildren's grandchildren may be brighter than we can even imagine.
Now, you've been down here guiding for 45 years. How's it changed?
Oh my gosh, that's why I'm so adamant about it, because on the other side, the west side of the river, where there's no way for the river water to get over there, all the land has disappeared. Gone, 100% gone where I fished. I fished 100% of the time over there for all these years. Now we fish over here 98% of the time, because when you do that and the land goes away, when the juvenile fish come in or are born there, there's no way for them to hide from predation. So every little croaker that big could eat 100, because they're microscopic, and if you have 1 million of them, that's 100 million fish, crabs, shrimp getting eaten every day. Well, guess what? The estuary just gobbles itself up. You need edges, you need aquatic vegetation, you need all the things that nature was supposed to do before we engineered the river. You know, Mississippi is the most engineered body of water in the world. But you know, it goes all the way back up there to the prairie potholes, when all the farmers who are supposed to be the stewards of the land, just like we are. And it's a man-made disaster, the whole thing. I mean, from the Corps of Engineers to the farmers to, you know, the people that fight diversions and fight putting the river back in here. I mean, it's the way Mother Nature intended it to be, and humans only think in their own lifetime, you know, but it's our great-grandchildren that are gonna pay the price. It might be too late for me and you, but it's not too late to save it for them.
What would it take to make big, large-scale change?
It's actually, this is a living laboratory. This teaches us how to do it when we build man-made diversions, to where we can get it right the first time. You know, we're all stewards, and we have to take responsibility for the things we do. This all, just 2 years, this was all open water everywhere you see. It's incredible when you let Mother Nature do what she's supposed to do and manipulate a little bit to expedite the process. It's amazing what you can do. You can expedite it 100 times what she could do without us. So it's not too late. That's the point of it all.
We've driven over 1,500 miles and completed our journey from the farm fields of the heartland to the terminus of the Mississippi River at the Gulf of Mexico. Along the way, we have learned about the importance of the watershed from the perspectives of small towns and enormous cities, and those holding tight to the past. Without question, society has inflicted incredible damage upon our nation's waterways over the last 2 centuries. Yet hope is not lost. By working with nature, not against her, the processes and procedures of Horizon 2 can restore balance, can deliver ecological services and wildlife benefits, while developing a source of renewable energy to not only fuel transportation vehicles, but also the future economy of a region critical to our country.